At the center of Hamilpus Mountain, there was a man wearing fire-resistant boots and equipped with a fire resistance buff. However, the heat from below still seeped through the resistance and reached his feet. For those without fire resistance, surviving in this place was impossible. This man was ranked 31st in Korea. He was the Fire Dragon Knight, Agni. This area contained a legendary grade item that could only be obtained from the fire dragon that appeared in the secret dungeon of Hamilpus Mountain. The Heart of the Fire Dragon. This was the perfect item for him, as all of his skills were linked to fire. It felt as though this item was made specifically for him. Ahead of him, he saw the door leading into a chamber, the secret dungeon where the legendary dragon lay sleeping. On his way, he spotted a man sleeping in a place where even he, fully clad in fire-resistant equipment, struggled to proceed. Looking more intently, he noticed the man's gloves, accessories, and shoes. All of them were legendary grade or even beyond. Seeing that the man wasn't fully on guard, Agni entertained the thought of taking his items. But he suddenly wondered, how could this man even be here? Even he, a Fire Dragon Knight, barely managed to reach this place using a secret map obtained from his exclusive quest. Agni thought that this man might be incredibly powerful, given that he was sleeping right in front of the Fire Dragon's dungeon in the lava region. This meant his fire resistance was far superior to Agni's. However, Agni also noted the mismatch. The man was sleeping soundly, and even snoring. Agni reasoned that if he could land a preemptive strike, he might be able to win despite the difference in their fire resistance levels. But the question lingered in his mind. Who is this man? If he managed to reach this place, he must be someone well-known. Agni mentally reviewed all the names in the top 100 rankings, but this man wasn't among them. This could only mean one thing. He was an unofficial ranker. With that realization, Agni decided not to let his guard down. Agni unleashed a fire dragon charge, confident that he had hit his target. However, the man effortlessly evaded the attack. Agni began to wonder if the man was actually awake. You have taken damage while the skill, Narcolepsy, is activated. The blanket for excellent sleep has been placed in your inventory. The skill, Sleepwalking, has been activated. Agni's thoughts raced. Is this guy really asleep? Suddenly, the man moved at lightning speed and counterattacked. Agni was stunned by the sheer quickness of his movements. In a desperate attempt to retaliate, Agni struck behind him, or above him, but the man wasn't there. Agni could feel it, his ranker's instinct screaming at him. He couldn't afford to let this man land a direct attack. Without hesitation, Agni pulled out his Fire Dragon's scale shield, the shield he prided himself on, boasting the highest defense power among all his equipment. But then it happened. It wasn't just any attack. It was something he couldn't dodge or block. In an instant, Agni was struck. He had taken significant damage and cannot move for 1 second. Before he could react, the sleeping man swiftly launched another attack with his sword, a rapid strike that seemed impossibly precise despite his apparent slumber. He received a fatal attack and was afflicted with the abnormal status, Nightmare. This caused him to experience hallucinations and intense pain for 5 seconds. Agni saw a vision of death, followed by an overwhelming agony. Unable to withstand it, Agni was eliminated and forcibly logged out. As punishment, he would be unable to re-enter the game for 24 real-world hours. Agni couldn't believe it. He had been defeated by an unofficial ranker. His character slowly disappeared, leaving behind a weapon and some coins on the ground. After the battle, the character that defeated him returned to sleeping peacefully. Hours later, he woke up, trying to recall when he had fallen asleep again. Seeing the scattered items on the ground, he muttered, "Looks like my sleepwalking skill activated again." While apologizing internally, he reasoned that his sleepwalking skill must have activated because he was attacked. Even so, he couldn't just leave the items behind. He picked up the flame sword and collected 897 gold, which would help cover his living expenses a bit. He didn't expect to obtain such a great item after a good rest. Feeling fortunate, he admired the benefits of his class. 1 year and 4 months after the launch of the game idea, Hyunsung pondered his next steps. If I slay the fire dragon, maybe I can level up a bit more, he thought. He wondered, when will I finally become a ranker? Class: Descendant of Thanos. Class rank: God. Title: Are you a legend? Because I am a god. With that, Hyunsung continued on his way, his determination unwavering. Inside an office building, Assistant Manager Lee was approached by his boss with a seemingly casual question. What time do you think it is right now? Caught off guard, Lee quickly apologized and explained, the caretaker arrived late today. His boss, unimpressed, followed up with another pointed question. If the caretaker resigns, are you planning to resign from this job as well? The other employees couldn't help but feel sorry for Hyunsung, who was being scolded once again. This time, even before 9 a.m., they wondered why Department Head Park acted this way, especially since Hyunsung was known for his good personality and consistently excellent work. It didn't take much for them to come up with an explanation: jealousy. Park had graduated from an elite and prestigious university, but after 10 years, he was still just a department head without a single promotion. Meanwhile, Hyunsung, a confident high school graduate, had landed a job at a major company. He worked diligently, excelled at his tasks, and was not only handsome but also popular among the female employees. It had been 5 years since Hyunsung started working for this company. Opportunities for a high school graduate like him to join another major corporation were rare, so losing this job wasn't an option. For now, he endured. Park, in his condescending way, had once commented that Hyunsung was lucky to be exempted from conscription because of his sick younger sister. That moment had made Hyunsung want to lash out, but instead, he held back, masking his anger with laughter. All he could do at that time was thank his boss through gritted teeth. Now, as Park told him to stop stating the obvious and ordered him to go buy coffee, Hyunsung had no choice but to comply. He needed this job, not just for himself but to cover his sister's hospital bills and his living expenses. Hyunsung had to keep working for his monthly salary, even in a place like this. He thought about how exhausting this day had been and how much he truly wanted to quit. That evening, at the building where Hyunsung lived, the caretaker was preparing to leave as Hyunsung arrived home. The caretaker apologized for arriving late earlier that day and promised to come earlier tomorrow. In the house left to him by their parents, Hyunsung lived with his younger sister, Hyuna. At 20 years old, an age where most people spent their time hanging out with friends, laughing, and being carefree, Hyuna's life was different. Because their parents had passed away when they were young and Hyuna couldn't walk, she matured early, far beyond her years. Since she couldn't move freely, Hyuna spent her time playing games and reading books. Hyunsung asked if she had already eaten dinner, and she replied that she had. He had also already eaten, so he excused himself to change clothes, promising to return afterward. He tried not to show it, but the truth was, he was utterly exhausted. 6 years ago, their family car collided with a truck that had crossed the center line of the road. Their parents, who were sitting in the front seats, died instantly. Fortunately, Hyuna survived. Although her brain showed no signs of damage, she lost the use of both her legs. Even though 6 years have passed since the accident, it remains a traumatic memory for Hyuna, who was only 14 years old at the time. She had witnessed her parents die right in front of her. Recently, they received some good news from the doctor: the fact that Hyuna's health is gradually improving. Hyuna, who used to blame herself every day and cry, saying it was her fault, is now smiling. For Hyunsung, seeing her laugh like this is a relief. He believes it's all thanks to that game. Upon the doctor's recommendation, Hyuna started playing a virtual reality game last year. At first, she wasn't enthusiastic, but she became more energetic as she got used to it. The game is set in a world larger than the actual Earth, a virtual reality game called Idea. No other words could describe it except as an alternate Earth. Even though the game has been out for more than a year, it continues to maintain a large player base, making it the most successful game of its kind. Hyuna was preparing to go to sleep. Hyunsung told her to call him if she needed anything. When he bought Hyuna's capsule, he also purchased one for himself. Even though it was very expensive, he never thought of it as a waste of money because the capsule was incredibly useful. There was only one reason he bought the capsule. The flow of time in the game was different from real life. For every hour that passed in the real world, 5 hours passed inside the game. Hyunsung was likely the only person in the world who bought a capsule for sleeping instead of playing. Through this, he was able to catch up on his sleep. Normally, in the real world, he could only sleep 4 to 5 hours, but in Idea, he could sleep for 20 to 25 hours. Without this, he might have been completely exhausted from work. Now that he thought about it, he realized he could probably make a lot of money through the game. At this point, Idea was no longer just a simple game. As the best virtual game in the world, it had generated enormous profits. Today, it wasn't merely recognized as a game but also as an industry, with countless people quitting their jobs to play Idea. Perhaps it was the same for kids who started playing in its early stages. When he was younger, his gaming skills were so exceptional that he was offered the chance to become a professional gamer. He might have pursued that path if his parents hadn't objected, but he no longer thought about such childish things. For the sake of his only remaining family member, he had stopped dwelling on meaningless thoughts. With that, he logged into the game to start sleeping. Hyunsung, the player gaining recognition, connected to Idea. This is the village where newbies and their characters arrive before proceeding to the tutorial. Even though it was called a village, he was the only one there. The place was like a room where you could move your character around and adapt to the virtual world. But for him, there was no other inn like this. Upon entering, Hyunsung immediately lay down. He wished he could sleep like this in the real world. Soon, he was snoring peacefully. Later that night in the game, a system notification appeared, stating that he had slept for over 10,000 hours in-game. Because of this, he gained numerous class upgrades, new skills, and various benefits, all from simply sleeping for a total of 10,000 hours. Even while sleeping, his mind drifted to that bastard, Department Head Park. The next morning in the game, Hyunsung woke up and checked the time. 6 hours had passed in the real world, a good amount of sleep. He was about to log out to grab some food but noticed several messages popping up. It was the first time he had seen anything like this. He was stunned by what he saw. He had no idea what was happening. His class had been changed to a god rank class, descendant of Thanos. He wondered what it meant. When he checked his status, he couldn't believe his eyes. All his stats started at 55, whereas new players typically began with stats of 5. He hadn't even passed the tutorial. He thought it might have something to do with the titles he had received. People often said you could earn a lot of money from this game. Hyunsung calmed himself and decided to learn everything about his newfound class. With that, he immediately logged out. Hyunsung was amazed because this was far more incredible than he had imagined. If he became skilled enough, he could earn the average annual salary of a regular worker. Hyunsung knew it would be challenging at a low level, so he wondered if he could manage it by dipping into his savings. 2 months. That should be more than enough. The next morning, Hyunsung was singing while cooking breakfast. His sister, Hyuna, asked if he was making breakfast. He quickly answered, yes, and then asked if she wanted to use the bathroom. Hyuna immediately replied, no, but Hyunsung still went to her and asked what she would do if an accident happened. Hyuna told him to just put her in her wheelchair. Afterward, she quickly sent him out of the room. Seeing Hyuna brightening up like this was all thanks to Idea. That's why Hyunsung was truly grateful for this game. After Hyunsung left Hyuna, she attempted to stand from her wheelchair on her own. She could do it easily in the game, but it was difficult in real life. She thought that if she practiced a bit more, she might be able to walk again. The doctor had told her that she could walk sooner if she worked on building more muscle. Hyuna planned to keep this a secret from Hyunsung until she could walk again. At Hyunsung's workplace, Department Head Park asked him about the letter he had handed over. Hyunsung replied that it was his resignation letter. Mr. Park asked why this sudden decision and whether it had anything to do with what happened yesterday. Mr. Park said he would pretend it never happened and ordered Hyunsung to return to his desk. He advised Hyunsung to think about his injured younger sister, pointing out that if he quit suddenly, how would his sister manage? Furious, Hyunsung slammed the desk with his fist and thanked Mr. Park for everything he had done for him but added that he hoped they would never meet again. At this, Mr. Park's nose began to run. Hyunsung felt like he had won the lottery, but instead of money, he had won an opportunity to earn money in that game. Seeing this chance that depended entirely on him, he knew he had to be cautious. Hyunsung entered a computer shop and used a PC. The capsules were on the right, and the regular PCs were on the left. Hyunsung began studying. He was certain that making money would be easier at higher levels. Currently, Korea's official #1 ranker was above level 350, while most players were around level 100. Because of this, items between levels 100 and 200 were the most in demand. For every 4 levels a normal rank achieves, a legendary rank would only level up once. God rank comes after legendary, so it requires 5 times the experience. Hyunsung worried that resigning might turn out to be a mistake, but thinking of it another way, it meant he was 5 times more efficient compared to a normal rank. Moreover, the posts he read mentioned that, when used correctly, higher ranks were significantly stronger. Otherwise, why would anyone aim for a higher rank class? Hyunsung decided to rent a capsule. The attendant told him that the capsule was prepaid, meaning he had to pay before using it. He had 8.5 hours left before his usual work hours would have ended. He rented the capsule for 9 hours. Each hour cost $20, so the total cost for 9 hours was $180. Hyunsung began using the capsule. He didn't allocate his remaining ability points immediately because he didn't know what skills he currently had, and he didn't want to use them recklessly. He started pondering what kind of class the descendant of Thanos was. When he looked into it, Thanos was revealed to be the god of death and sleep. Since ancient times, Thanos was known as the strongest of all gods, and it was said that no other god could stand against him. He reveled in death and sleep, and legends claimed he found joy in mingling with evil. Hyunsung still couldn't determine what type of class this was. He thought to himself that this god seemed like a hopeless case, a punk. However, considering he was the god of death and sleep, it wasn't too bad. Hyunsung checked his skill log and discovered he already had 5 skills. 1. Thanos Narcolepsy, passive, increases your stats simply by sleeping. 2. Thanos Dreams, passive, earns DP, dream points, based on how long you sleep. DP can also be gained by hunting boss monsters or defeating users at least 30 levels higher than you. Using the DP store, you can purchase items or skills, even legendary rank ones. Although these items cannot be sold once in your possession, they won't be lost upon death. Contains all types of skills and items, including legendary rank. 3. Thanos Somnambulism, passive, while in deep sleep, an AI of equal level to yours will control your character. This activates if someone attacks you or if you fall asleep in an area with monsters. 4. Thanos Nightmares, passive, all weapon abilities are boosted by 200%. You can wield any type of weapon, regardless of requirements. 5. Sabbath of Death, allows you to spend DP to put any target to sleep for 1 minute. While asleep, the target takes double damage. The DP cost varies depending on the target. Cooldown, 10 hours. Hyunsung marveled at his skills. Though he lacked any direct combat-oriented abilities, the DP store allowed him to select skills that complemented his playstyle. Combining his class skills, he effectively started the game with 10 skills in total, an impressive feat. It wouldn't be surprising if others accused him of being a hacker. As he explored the possibilities, Thanos' narcolepsy activated. A prompt warned him that he was being forced to sleep. Even if he disconnected, or if the capsule were damaged, his character would remain in the game. The system also informed him, you have 11 hours and 48 minutes before you're forced to log out. At the rehabilitation hospital, Hyuna was training herself to walk again. The doctor told her that walking would be a bit challenging, but it wasn't due to any psychological reasons. She just needed to build some muscles. Hyuna said she was doing her best because she wanted to show her brother that she was improving. The doctor then asked her when she planned to tell her brother that she was the one paying for her own hospital and rehabilitation bills. Hyuna replied that she was about to tell him, but her brother thought she was joking when she mentioned earning money through gaming. Because of this, the doctor assumed her brother probably didn't watch much TV. He likely thought she couldn't save money from gaming because of her condition. Hyuna then decided to wait and surprise her brother all at once. The doctor remarked that it sounded like it would be a fun moment and said he wanted to see her brother's surprised expression. Hyuna laughed and said she would take a picture of his reaction and send it to the doctor. After a while, Hyunsung called. He said he got scared when he came home and found Hyuna wasn't there. Hyuna explained that she went out for a stroll with her caregiver. Hyunsung asked if she needed him to pick her up, but Hyuna replied that she wasn't a child anymore and that she was with her caregiver. She then asked for her doctor's permission to go home. The doctor told her to hurry so her brother wouldn't suspect anything. Hyuna immediately called her caregiver to arrange for a pickup. She reminded the caregiver to stick to the story she told her brother, that they had just gone out for a stroll, to make sure their explanations matched. When they returned home, Hyunsung assured her that he would take care of everything since he would be staying home that day. He gave the caregiver a day off, noting that they didn't get many rest days. Afterward, Hyunsung brought Hyuna to her room. As she settled in, Hyuna wondered if Hyunsung had realized that she had gone to the hospital. Still, she thought, even if he did, he probably wouldn't be angry about it. Wondering if something bad had happened at his workplace, Hyuna asked Hyunsung if there was something he wanted to share. Hyunsung revealed that he had quit his job and decided to start earning money through idea. Hyuna was immediately amazed and excited by what he said. She enthusiastically responded that it was an excellent decision since so many people were now making money from idea. Hyunsung didn't expect such a positive reaction from her. Hyuna then asked where he was in the game, what class and rank he had reached. She assumed he must have gotten something valuable in the game that prompted him to quit his job. Hyuna also offered to help him since she was already at a high level. When Hyunsung asked about her level, Hyuna proudly said she was at level 331 and ranked in the top 1000. She added that she was earning good money from IDEA, enough to pay for her treatment fees on her own. At that moment, Hyunsung realized that she had been secretly covering her rehabilitation and treatment expenses. Upset, Hyunsung lightly hit her on the head. While he understood that Hyuna was only concerned for him, he didn't like the idea of her doing things behind his back. For her part, Hyuna was also worried about him, knowing how hard he worked but couldn't use his own savings freely. That's why she decided to handle her medical bills on her own. Hyunsung then said that since he was starting his journey in IDEA, he would probably have a lot of questions for her about the game. Hyuna reassured him, saying she would help him, especially since the first half of the game could be quite challenging. Hyunsung's goal was to break into the top 1000 within 3 months. Hyuna asked him why he was so confident, given that she had been playing for a year already. She also inquired about his class. Hyunsung replied that he'd keep it a secret for now. Hyuna was dying to know what kind of character Hyunsung had, but he said he would only reveal it if he failed to reach the top 1000 within 3 months. Hyuna remarked that it wasn't going to be that easy and joked that he'd probably need her help within less than a month. Hyunsung smiled and told her to wait and see what would happen. Hyunsung then entered the capsule and began connecting to the IDEA game. Hyunsung observed the same view as last year, the familiar, empty starter village. He knew it was time to leave that place. Using his narcolepsy skill, he slept for 58 hours and 32 minutes, and even while sleeping, his stats increased. Although he was already aware of this, he was still surprised to see the improvements with his own eyes. It was truly amazing. In the center of the village stood the door that led to the tutorial, a door his father had once mentioned, saying, "The first button is always important." With that in mind, Hyunsung entered the door and teleported to the tutorial. The tutorial instructed him, choose his weapon, then attack and destroy the scarecrows. There was no time limit, and failure wasn't an option. Reward. The beginner's weapon he selected. Were all tutorials the same? Hyunsung foolishly expected it to be just another routine challenge. He began by selecting a weapon, something familiar to him. He chose the beginner's sword, as he had always favored swords when playing games in the past. Judging by how balanced his skills and stats were, his class was likely a hybrid, so it made sense that he opted for a sword. A tutorial scarecrow then appeared. However, for Hyunsung, it was too weak, and he quickly finished it off. You have cleared the quest. You will receive your reward. Hyunsung was surprised to see 4 messages appear after clearing a single tutorial. While he understood the title Monstrous Newbie that was awarded to him, the meaning of like a bystander was less clear. It was explained that the title was granted because he had left the tutorial uncleared for an entire year, a feat that, in its own way, reflected a form of professionalism. All of his rankings and titles could now be registered anonymously. This feature also caused his stats to increase, much to Hyunsung's satisfaction. The ability to remain anonymous was a huge advantage, as it would allow him to surprise Hyuna by playing as an unofficial ranker without revealing his identity. However, what Hyunsung appreciated the most was the effect of the Monstrous Newbie title, which boosted all experience points earned by 10%. For someone like him, who already had a 5 times experience point multiplier, this was the perfect bonus. He also received another title when his class changed, making him feel as if he had just won the lottery. A God rank title was truly remarkable. After reviewing all his titles, Hyunsung began to move once more. In IDEA, each server represented a different continent. The strongest country, and the one that developed the game, was Korea, the central nation. Hyunsung chose Dha Town, the most difficult and hostile of all the starter towns. The reason for his choice was its proximity to an orc village. Orcs were common monsters with levels ranging from 30 to slightly over 40, making them virtually impossible for beginners to defeat. Because of this, very few players ever visited the area. To Hyunsung, the best hunting ground in the game was one where no one else dared to go. In Dha Town, 2 guards named Hansen and Smith stood at their posts, bored from the lack of visitors to their village. Foreigners rarely, if ever, came to this place. The town was infamous for its unique monster, the highly acidic slime. Compared to other starter villages, Dha Town's easiest monster posed a significant challenge. The acidic slime's attacks were nearly impossible for beginners to avoid. Not only could its acid explosion severely damage you, but it would also melt your gear, and even your hair, if you got hit. On top of that, there was an orc village nearby, further discouraging players from venturing into the area. Suddenly, a flash of blue lightning struck from the sky, a teleportation technique. The two guards immediately recognized what that light meant. Villagers began to gather outside, curious about the unusual phenomenon. It had been a long time since a foreigner had visited Dha town. Hyunsung wondered why there was such a large crowd gathered, as if some sort of event was taking place. Moments later, the people began to disperse, visibly disappointed. They had expected something remarkable but were met with the sight of what appeared to be a weak and inexperienced individual. Even the two guards shared the crowd's sentiment, assuming he was just a clueless noob with hardly any experience. Though Hyunsung possessed an immortal body, the looks of pity directed at him didn't go unnoticed. He approached the guards and asked where he could find monsters. The guards informed him that the acid slimes could be found by following the main path straight ahead. However, they strongly advised against it, explaining that beginners didn't stand a chance against the slimes. Hyunsung simply nodded, replying that he already knew that, which was precisely why he came to this place. The guards, slightly exasperated, warned him that the slime's acid blasts were as fast as cannon fire and nearly impossible to dodge. They added that the acid could melt not just his equipment but even his hair if he was hit. Hyunsung thanked them for their warning and walked off with quiet determination. The guards felt a pang of sympathy for Hyunsung. He was so young, yet they assumed he must be dealing with hardships far greater than their own. Hyunsung began running into the forest. Not long after, he spotted an acid slime. He noted how difficult it would be for a beginner to hit its core, as it was incredibly small. For a novice, its speed truly would resemble cannon fire. However, Hyunsung wasn't a beginner. With precise movement, he drove his weapon straight into the slime's mouth, destroying it effortlessly. The system notified him of earned experience points, but he barely acknowledged it. It was far too easy for him. Deciding to push himself further, Hyunsung returned to the guards and asked them where the orc village was located. The guards stared at him in disbelief. The orc village? Why would you want to go there? Hyunsung replied matter-of-factly, to hunt orcs, of course. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. To them, his request sounded absurd. One of them, visibly concerned, cautioned him, "You shouldn't even think about something like that. You're too young. You shouldn't give up on life so easily," one of the guards said, his voice filled with concern. "You should try to live a little longer. Do your best. Even if it's not much, take this. Take mine too." To Hyunsung's surprise, the guards handed him some money. "I'm giving this to you because you remind me of my nephew," the guard added with a somber expression. "Forget about the acid slimes. Use this money to buy a scroll that will teleport you to another town. Start fresh there." Hyunsung stared at the money in his hands and received an unexpected notification. Title earned, Begging King. The system described the title. The true art of begging is when people give you money before you even ask for it. Hyunsung couldn't help but think, they could have just said no. But why treat someone like a beggar? Still, he resolved to accept whatever was given to him from now on. After leaving the guards behind, Hyunsung resumed his search for the orc village. As he ventured deeper into the forest, he noticed a massive footprint embedded in the ground. A smirk appeared on his face. "Looks like I'm in the right place." After a while, the orcs emerged. Hyunsung was surprised that they were red in color because orcs are usually green. The orcs started attacking him. They were fast, but their movements were large and included unnecessary actions. Hyunsung quickly defeated one of them and leveled up several times. He also received a DP, Dream Point, as an effect of his skill, Thanos' Dream. He chased down another orc and killed it. Once again, he leveled up several times and earned another DP. It was very easy for him to increase his level and earn DP. He planned to eliminate all the red orcs in the village. More red orcs arrived. He could handle them even without using skills. His plan was to wipe them out first before selecting a skill. Hyunsung began his attack and enjoyed the feast of experience points. Back in the town, a guard was feeling bored. His companion remarked that it was actually a good thing because it meant the people were safer, so he should be happy. Suddenly, both of them were startled when they heard a noise and saw movement in the grass. They assumed it was a red orc, but to their surprise, Hyunsung emerged. They asked him why he came out of the grass. They mentioned that he ignored their warning and went to face the orcs, only to return with his tail between his legs. Hyunsung didn't prolong the story and instead asked where he could sell the items he was carrying, hides from the red orcs. He had at least 20 pieces with him. To get one of these hides, you had to take down 2 orcs, meaning he had defeated at least 40 of them. The guards quickly directed him to the general goods store. The guards realized that they couldn't truly judge Hyunsung's strength based on his appearance. They recalled giving him some money earlier and wondered if they could take it back if they saw him again. Hyunsung entered the general goods store to sell what he had collected. The storekeeper was astonished when Hyunsung mentioned that he had hunted around 50 red orcs. Although most of the items seemed like common materials, they still helped him level up. Aside from the hides, the teeth and bones of the red orcs were in excellent condition. He was given 150 gold for everything, plus a small bonus. The 150 gold was equivalent to about $12. In less than 30 minutes of real-world time, he had earned $12. At this rate, he could earn far more than his usual salary. Hyunsung decided to focus on leveling up for the first month or two instead of saving money, though he could still make a profit even from common items. He sprinted off, fully dedicating himself to hunting. Watching him move at such speed, the guards couldn't help but find him extraordinary. One of them thought, if he's this enthusiastic about hunting red orcs, it's better for us. However, they wondered just how determined he was to hunt orcs to the point of running like that. Hyunsung began fighting the red orcs again. His first attack slashed one across the neck, and his second attack pierced its chest, defeating a red orc warrior. However, Hyunsung was starting to grow bored of this area. He had been playing for 10 hours now, and his leveling progress had slowed down. The items he was acquiring here were mostly common, and he hadn't yet approached the demonic 100 level cap. He couldn't afford to fall behind in the long run. With the number of orcs in the area dwindling, he wanted to start hunting stronger monsters. Wasting no time, Hyunsung decided to return to the village and move on to greater challenges. Hyunsung thought that there were probably boss and elite monsters in the area, but he wasn't quite strong enough to face them yet. If he wanted to fight a boss, he would need at least 1 attack skill. He checked his remaining ability points. To freely use skills, he would need mana points, so he allocated points to his intelligence to increase his mana points. Although he was a bit worried about his magical strength, he figured he could improve it after his next level up. Afterward, he opened the DP store. Wanting to save the best for last, which was the skill, he decided to browse through the items first. The first thing Hyunsung tried was a normal rank item worth 1 DP. He obtained a steel dagger, which could be used as a throwing knife. Next, he tried for a rare rank item, which cost 10 DP. He received a bloodstone ring that granted a 10% chance to recover 10% of his stamina upon defeating an enemy. He liked this item, as it seemed like a top-level piece of equipment. Having it so early in the game gave him a mix of excitement and nervousness. Finally, he decided to try for a unique rank item, which also cost 10 DP. He didn't like what came out. Isla's stick, which offered a 300% increase in all magic attack damage, reduced casting time by 30%, and allowed 3 dispels per day. However, for Hyunsung, staffs were entirely useless. Disappointed, he turned his attention to the heroic grade items, hoping for something more practical and useful. Next up was Iris's failed product 1, a weapon enhancer that doubled the attack power of a weapon and reduced mana consumption for weapon-related skills by 30%. Hyunsung felt underwhelmed by its bonuses, considering it was a heroic grade item. However, he thought it might serve a purpose for a specific type of quest later on. And finally, what he had been eagerly waiting for, the legendary grade item. He was speechless and glanced down. He couldn't help but wonder why he wasn't just given an item he could use right away. What's the deal with this? An egg with 3 question marks. There was no description or any information written. Everything was just question marks. This is unlucky. Misfortune just to pull a cheat skill. At least I still have the skills left, he thought. Suddenly, a red orc appeared behind him, but he simply punched it and reopened the DP store. The skills were twice as expensive as the items, but they were absolutely worth it. Items were random, but he could use any skill he managed to obtain. He started with a normal grade skill. Running. It increased his running speed by 10%. Next, he acquired a rare grade skill. Magic bullet fire. He could create small bullets using mana. 10 mana points were required to form 5 bullets. Finally, he got an attack skill. Next, he obtained a unique grade skill. Berserker's Song. For 10 seconds, he would ignore all damage. His movement speed and attack power would increase by 50%, and he could release his spirit from his weapon. Once the skill ended, he would receive 50% of the damage he avoided during those 10 seconds and lose consciousness for 5 seconds. Next came a heroic grade skill. Siren Seduction. All male animals and men within a 100-meter radius of the user would be charmed. An aggro skill? Just trash. Finally, he obtained a legendary grade skill. Reaper's Chains. The chains would target all enemies within a 30-meter radius of the user. The chains would ignore all defense abilities and deal 500% of the user's attack damage. It was an area of effect skill. At last, a useful ability. In a location where people could watch Hyunsung from within the game, a man was observing him. The man didn't seem happy with what he had seen. Inferno. The company behind the game, Idea, was located in Korea. This was the user management team at the Inferno headquarters. The team leader sighed and said that it was madness to think there was a player who could clear that. He wondered why the development team had done such a thing. The geniuses and their ideas? Seriously? User management team leader, Jo Minwoo. The team leader said that they needed to add this to the special interest list. It would be pushed to the top of the list because it was a god rank. Minwoo rubbed his temples as he wondered why Hyunsung had chosen to go to Dha Town of all places when there were so many other options available. His staff member quickly answered, saying that perhaps Hyunsung knew that he could level up quickly in that place. Minwoo scolded him and asked if he thought he didn't know that. Soon after, they saw that Hyunsung was opening the DP store. Finally, he had used it. At first, they hadn't paid much attention to it. After all, no matter how good a class was, if a player lacked proper control, the class would be useless. But this player, it was impossible for him to move properly even with good stats without excellent control. He was so skilled that it wasn't surprising for him to be placed on the special interest list. Why had someone with such talent only started playing now? If possible, they wanted to mess with the probability rates of the DP store. The entire game, Idea, was controlled by artificial intelligence. Especially regarding probability rates, the AI had set them, and even the development team couldn't tamper with it. Normally, he wouldn't believe it, but the only thing they could do now was pray. Team leader Minwoo laughed as a useless unique grade item appeared. He thought his prayers had worked. Wait! Why did that appear there? The failed product of Iris. The key item that was said to be the most necessary and most important for the Iris quest. The Iris quest was now tied to that player. Minwoo told everyone to stay calm. He was sure that this was the worst possible outcome. He hoped it would have been another staff from the legendary grade. But then, a legendary item egg appeared. They didn't know what it was either. Since it was something Hyunsung couldn't use at the moment, it was good for them. Minwoo ordered them to ask the development team what this item was. Then came the selection of skills. Minwoo prayed that it would be a terrible skill. Anything, as long as it wasn't an attack skill. Minwoo chuckled at what he saw. No matter how good his control was, he knew he wouldn't be able to kill many monsters without attack skills. Now, only the legendary grade remained. Minwoo heard a shout of, "Jackpot!" Reaper's Chains. This skill possessed power that was at the higher end of legendary grade skills. It could be said to be the best AoE, area of effect, skill. With that level of control and that skill, it was almost guaranteed that he could clear the Red Orc Village. After killing the boss of the Red Orc Village, he could also uncover the hidden dungeon. Minwoo left to report this to his superiors. Once a month, one could buy legendary skills and items in the DP store. Managing the DP would become more difficult as the game progressed. Since the skill Narcolepsy didn't earn any DP, he thought he would need to sleep every now and then. Since he could only use the sleepwalking skill in the middle of hunting grounds, he could lay down a blanket and his character would automatically hunt on its own. Hyunsung really enjoyed his god rank class. Leaving his job was the best decision he ever made. When he worked at the company, he had to endure all the stress. But now, he had already saved up $80 in less than 3 hours, and he was still at a low level. If he was earning this much, his sister Hyuna was probably making a lot as well, considering she was at level 331. He still took pride in being her older brother, so he wanted to help her accumulate as much money as possible. Hyunsung set a goal to reach level 300 within 3 months. As Hyunsung continued on, he left to finish the boss at the Red Orc village. He couldn't see where the boss monster was. He noticed there were Red Orc shamans, 2 of them, so he knew this wouldn't be easy. If the boss appeared, even if he had to waste DP, he had to defeat it using Sabbath of the Dead. But first, he needed to deal with the minions. Hyunsung used the skill Siren's Seduction. The orcs were confused, wondering where the effect was coming from. Hyunsung was amazed by the effect. The orcs seemed to go crazy. Then, the Red Orc hero, Kurik, charged forward. Hyunsung thought this might be the boss. All the orcs charged at him at once, and Hyunsung used Reaper's chains. Moments later, all the orcs around him were wiped out, and he leveled up several times. He defeated the Red Orc hero, Kurik, and received 50 DP due to the effect of Thanatos' dream. He obtained Kurik's secret map, as well as the titles, "Will Take One Hit," and "This is why we use an AoE skill." Suddenly, he cursed under his breath. Hyunsung couldn't help but be amazed by the sheer amount of drops, but he was also struggling to figure out how to collect them all. It was the same as yesterday, his enemies weren't respawning. He wondered if it was because this hunting ground wasn't popular, or if it had something to do with the map itself. Hyunsung suspected that there might be a hidden dungeon on the map. Perhaps the enemies would start respawning once he cleared it. He spotted a path ahead, but he was puzzled as to why it was so obvious. Not only were these monsters stronger and smarter than regular ones, but they could also use skills. It was a place where elite monsters acted like regular ones, likely the hidden dungeon. Hyunsung silently prayed for a good reward and a significant number of level-ups. Hyunsung entered the hidden dungeon, the Orc Graveyard. He was the first to discover it. The experience points he would gain from clearing the dungeon would be doubled. The vengeful spirits of the Orc warriors had awakened. Since damage would be divided when attacking these bodiless spirits, unless one had specific skills, a regular attack wouldn't be able to deliver a critical strike. They weren't an ideal matchup. As for his attack skills, aside from his special move, he only had magic bullet fire. It wasn't going to be easy. Only one elite monster appeared, making it the perfect test subject. As Hyunsung had thought, the damage was halved when it wasn't a skill attack. He used magic bullet fire, hitting the vital point and delivering a critical strike. Since it was a skill attack, it was clearly a critical strike. However, because it wasn't a weapon attack, Thanos' nightmare wouldn't activate. The knees were also considered a vital point. It seemed that all skill attacks were treated as critical strikes. Hyunsung studied the monster's skills and attack patterns. Even though fighting a ghost was frustrating, he could spot the signs when it was about to activate. Because of this, he was able to counter it easily. Hyunsung was amazed at how much experience he gained from this encounter. With around 50 such monsters in the dungeon, he figured he could gain 5 levels if he defeated it. Since Hyuna wanted to walk again as soon as possible, her caretaker scheduled as many rehab treatments as possible. She was happy to be able to get away when her brother was playing. She mentioned that he played like a maniac at first. The caretaker asked if it was truly enjoyable. Hyuna told her that she should try it too. Hyunsung mentioned that he had gotten a good class, which made Hyuna think that he was probably between level 10 and level 15 if it was a rare or unique character class. Hyuna thought that if it weren't for that accident, she might have been going to school and living a normal life like everyone else. But somehow, she had managed to meet kind people in the game, Idea. Even though she had informed her guildmates, Hyuna wasn't sure if her brother would join their guild. She didn't want to rush him and decided to ask once he reached level 100. Her doctor asked her if they would hunt together as siblings. Hyuna responded that it was still far off because she estimated that he probably hadn't even reached level 5 yet. She mentioned that skills were difficult to come by at first, so it would be hard for her brother until he reached level 30 for a new skill. The doctor noticed that Hyuna seemed happy because of it. Hyuna mentioned that she had a bet with her brother, whether or not he could reach the top 1,000 within 3 months. She laughed, thinking that it was impossible. Hyuna wondered what she would ask Hyunsung to buy her if she won their bet. Hyunsung had finished off all the mobs. The only ones left were the mini-boss and the named boss. If he could defeat both of them and gain the experience points from clearing them, he might easily reach level 30. He would gain a class skill upon reaching level 30. He couldn't use the Reaper's chains carelessly, as it was a special move, and magic bullet fire was meant for crowd control, making its damage weak. He was hoping for a useful skill to appear. In any case, it seemed that Idea also had a room for a mini-boss. Regardless, Hyunsung opened the door. The vengeful spirit of the orc shaman awakened. The vengeful spirit of the orc shaman called upon the vengeful spirits of the orc warriors. Hyunsung was surprised to see that the orc warriors were included in the summon. The orcs became enraged, and each of them received a buff. As a result, Hyunsung broke into a sweat, still smiling. The vengeful spirit of the orc shaman activated a buffing skill. The stats of the orc warriors' vengeful spirits increased. Hyunsung noticed that its movements were different from those on the previous floors. Although he could easily eliminate them all using the Reaper's chains, he knew he needed to save that for the boss. The orc shaman didn't just provide buffs, it could also cast attack spells. Given the difficulty of the encounter, Hyunsung wondered what item it might drop. He decided to test its skills. It also used fire and lightning. Since this could be useful in his battle with the boss, he needed to buy time and observe if there were any other attack patterns. After 5 minutes, he defeated the vengeful spirits of the orc warriors. Hyunsung noticed that the enemy's frequent use of spells had decreased and thought that it might be running out of mana. So, he quickly finished it off. It was a tough fight and took longer than he expected. His stamina was almost drained as well. There seemed to be no usable items, but he leveled up from the fight. Hyunsung thought that if he used the Reaper's chains and the Sabbath of Death on the boss, he would defeat it much faster than the orc shaman. He opened the door, and the system asked him if he wanted to proceed to the second floor of the orc tomb's basement. It was a layout where he would need to defeat another set of monsters on the second floor before heading to the boss room. User Management Room. This area is another virtual reality zone within Idea. It is necessary to manage the players within the game due to the difference in the passage of time in the game. However, this place can only be accessed by using capsules at the Inferno headquarters. They had already been inside for 5 hours, which was equivalent to 25 hours in the game. They were tired, but they couldn't do anything about it because they didn't want to complain to the higher-ups. The team leader was going crazy trying to figure out why a game released a year ago would still be concerned about a beginner. It was lucky because the higher-ups didn't seem to care, given that it was already a year late, but the real problem was the development team leader, Min Yura. It seemed that Min Yura was concerned about the player Lee Hyunsung, which was the reason behind his unique character class, the Descendant of Thanos. This was a class unlike any other god rank class. Team leader Min Yura had created the Descendant of Thanos class solely for the story and the world's progression. She didn't intend for it to be a class available to any player. Who would have thought that a user would spend a fortune to sleep for 10,000 hours? Min Yura was the only reason why Idea did not seek assistance or technology from other game companies. That was why the company was willing to do anything for her. They noticed that it was easy for Hyunsung to clear the hidden dungeon. He had some difficulty with the mini-boss because he didn't use the Reaper's chain. It seemed like he was testing the controls, and they noticed he wasn't increasing his stats. If this continued, he would easily clear the boss. Moreover, they guessed he would reach level 33 soon. Once he reached level 30, he would unlock that skill. Unlike other users, for a Descendant of Thanos, reaching level 30, no matter how fast they were, would take at least a week. Yet, he managed to do it in just 1 day. After level 30, the number of experience points needed to level up would increase. At level 60, getting a new skill would be the first trial of strengthening. They called it the first trial. How long would it take for Hyunsung to complete this? The drops he was getting were also good. He had even managed to acquire some excellent items from the DP store. He got them fairly, and it was unlikely he would cause a massive change in the game just by earning rewards from clearing the boss. It was simply that he could grow stronger and faster. They had no reason to stop Hyunsung, so it was better to just watch him without thinking too much. Para Mountain. A part of the game that even the highest ranks had yet to reach. Here, a fierce battle was taking place. The Cyclops Lord, Aptolicon, was defeated by a group working together. They achieved an amazing victory, causing all of their stats to increase by 10. They also received many drops. This group was the Heroes Guild. The guild had only 7 members, including Huna. Although it was a small guild, they prided themselves on being equivalent to other well-known guilds. Their guild leader, Rin, and Sunny were legendary ranks. The old tank, Huna, and even STI were heroic ranks. I and Kaiser were unique ranks. A small elite guild that only chose the best of the best. Although they didn't aim to be an elite guild, their strict registration requirements meant that one had to be at least a unique rank to join. As a result, not many people joined. They were talking about Huna's brother, Hyunsung, and the guild leader was also planning to invite her sister to join their guild. She had recently ranked up to unique rank, so Rin was expecting her to join them. Rin mentioned that she was already level 50 after just a month of playing. Her teammates were amazed, as such a rank and level were typically achieved within 2 months, and they thought her control was impressive. Everyone in the guild agreed that Rin's sister should join them. Rin, however, mentioned that she wouldn't be able to log into her main account to help her sister. In idea, it was challenging to collect the specific items you needed. While hunting, players often accumulated more materials than complete items, leading many to create sub-accounts with classes focused on manufacturing. The guildmaster began distributing the items, which was always the most exciting part, dividing the acquired drops. After gathering all the items, the group returned to the guild house. Hyunsung defeated the vengeful spirit of the orc warriors and received 1 DP as a reward. He then proceeded to another floor, entering through its door. The room he entered was 5 times larger than the mini-boss room, fitting for the massive size of the boss waiting inside. Hyunsung wondered if the creature was asleep. Being a raid monster, it was likely to have multiple phases. Hyunsung planned to refrain from using his ultimate skill during Phase 1. Once Phase 2 began, he intended to unleash both the Reaper's Chains and Sabbath of Death. As the monster awoke, its deafening roar sent shivers down Hyunsung's spine. He began his assault, but suddenly, his vision blurred. He found it impossible to keep his eyes open. The skill Thanos's narcolepsy had activated, forcing him into sleep. As a result, the Thanos's somnambulism has been triggered. The atmosphere in the user management room brightened as Hyunsung fell asleep. They appreciated the timing of the activation of his narcolepsy skill during such a critical moment. One of them thought that even with the somnambulism skill, no AI would be able to defeat a raid boss monster as formidable as Carrick. Another asked the team leader about the somnambulism skill, pointing out that it allowed an avatar to mimic how a player would naturally act. This meant that Hyunsung's mechanics would be replicated perfectly. The team leader confirmed the observation and remarked that Hyunsung would indeed be able to defeat the monster. However, the leader clarified that they weren't celebrating the possibility of Hyunsung failing to defeat the beast. They knew full well that after activating Thanos's somnambulism, Hyunsung would easily overpower Carrick, especially with abilities like Sabbath of Death and Reaper's Chains. They hinted that the reason behind their confidence would become evident later. With a quiet thought, the team leader mused that it seemed the gods had not abandoned them just yet. After 20 minutes, Hyunsung successfully defeated Carrick, leaving the spectators in awe. They noticed that the AI appeared to have better control compared to Hyunsung himself. They realized that once Hyunsung became more accustomed to his skills, he would also be able to achieve the same level of mastery. This was because the AI was designed to operate flawlessly within the idea. Truly, it was remarkable. However, Hyunsung's character simply lay down and continued sleeping, surprising everyone. They wondered why Hyunsung wasn't collecting the items, knowing that they would disappear after a short time. This was precisely what the team leader had mentioned earlier. The team leader found this amusing because they knew it would happen. The somnambulism skill was designed solely for combat purposes. This meant that once the enemy was defeated, the user would return to a sleeping state. Moreover, if a hidden dungeon was cleared, it would reset, and the user would be sent to the nearest village. As a result, the items would vanish after the boss was defeated. Hyunsung felt disappointed. What's wrong with this game? He thought. What kind of game includes narcolepsy? Despite his frustration, he remained positive. His friend, Jaewon, gave him a call. It had been quite a while since they last met because Hyunsung had been too busy. Jaewon and Hyunsung had been close friends since middle school. Hyunsung asked Jaewon why he had called. Jaewon, now a company president, responded warmly. Hyunsung congratulated him and asked what Jaewon had been up to. Jaewon explained that he was creating advertisements and editing videos to improve their visual appeal, particularly videos related to idea. Because the time ratio in idea compared to reality was 5 to 1, live streaming wasn't possible. Even so, Idea had gained massive global popularity due to its entertaining content. The only challenge was that most skilled video editors worked for large companies. As a result, many MeTube managers outsourced video editing to smaller companies to ensure a decent product. Since many viewers enjoyed watching players with excellent control, the videos often had to be edited to make the players appear more skilled in combat. This was why Jaewon had started a video editing company specializing in creating content about Idea. Hyunsung asked Jaewon if he had already contracted any MeTubers. Jaewon admitted that their company had just opened a day ago, so they hadn't secured any contracts yet. They planned to start looking for potential collaborations the following day. Jaewon then shifted the conversation to Hyunsung's recent changes. Knowing Hyunsung's personality, Jaewon was certain he wouldn't just leave his job without a good reason. He asked Hyunsung about his grand plan. Hyunsung replied confidently, saying that he planned to make money using the game Idea. Curious, Jaewon asked if Hyunsung had been playing Idea regularly. To Jaewon's surprise, Hyunsung revealed that it hadn't even been a full day since he started playing the game. Jaewon was shocked and immediately asked Hyunsung what class he had obtained. Knowing how quickly Jaewon could grasp things, Hyunsung straightforwardly admitted that he had acquired a god rank. Jaewon was stunned into silence and quickly took a drink of his wine. After recovering, he asked Hyunsung what level he was currently at. Hyunsung wasn't entirely sure but estimated that he was around level 30. Jaewon was even more surprised, pointing out that it hadn't even been a full day since Hyunsung started. In real time, it hadn't even been 24 hours, only about 8 hours. Jaewon enthusiastically encouraged Hyunsung to collaborate with him in making videos. He reminded Hyunsung that he had received offers to become a professional player when he was younger. Moreover, Hyunsung now had a god rank. Jaewon explained that MeTubers earned around $8,000 per video, though Hyunsung dismissed it as an exaggeration. Jaewon clarified that a well-produced video could earn $8,000 in a month, and top-tier MeTubers with excellent control could earn as much as $80,000 monthly. Hearing this, Hyunsung immediately asked where the contract was and where he needed to sign. Jaewon burst out laughing, amused by the fact that Hyunsung already had a pen in hand. Hyunsung asked if there was anything he needed to prepare. Jaewon explained that all Hyunsung had to do was log into the game and say, "Start filming," to capture footage. Afterward, he could simply send the files to Jaewon, who would handle everything else. It sounded simple enough, but Hyunsung expressed concern about his lack of confidence in acting. Jaewon reassured him, saying that people nowadays are more interested in players with exceptional controls rather than acting skills. Since Jaewon had more knowledge about these things, Hyunsung suggested that Jaewon manage his MeTube channel entirely. Jaewon advised him not to be so trusting with others. He warned that if Hyunsung made the same offer to someone else, they might try to take a bigger cut of the earnings due to his kindness. Jaewon added that he only said this because he was a close friend. Hyunsung explained that he made the suggestion because he lacked knowledge about MeTube and trusted Jaewon to handle it better. Hyunsung wanted to split the earnings with Jaewon, but Jaewon insisted that at least 80% should go to Hyunsung. Hyunsung asked if it was hard for Jaewon to just say yes and move on. Jaewon had once lent him money meant for his college tuition, which Hyunsung used to pay some of Hyuna's hospital bills. Hyunsung would never forget this kindness, and he was deeply grateful. Hyunsung proposed a 50-50 split, stating that if Jaewon didn't agree, he wouldn't work on making the videos with him. Jaewon recalled the bullying he endured in middle school for being overweight. Hyunsung was the only friend who reached out to him during that time. As Jaewon thought about the offer, he wondered whether to take half of the earnings, but in the end, he decided that all the earnings should go to Hyunsung. Upon returning home, Hyunsung immediately searched for the USB port on the capsule and copied the saved footage. He selected the most recent footage and sent it to Jaewon. Jaewon quickly played the footage he received. Hyunsung had used a mask to conceal his identity. Jaewon liked the footage. It seemed it didn't need any editing or cuts. However, instead of watching everything, he focused on the battle between Hyunsung and the boss. "Let's take a look at the boss," he thought. And there it was, the boss. Jaewon couldn't help but wonder about Hyunsung's performance. It seemed as though Hyunsung had fallen asleep at some point. There was something strange about his style. Even though the controls were the same, the approach was drastically different. Hyunsung's attacks precisely targeted weak points. During his battle with the mini-boss, he fought like a wild hunter, ferocious and relentless. But now, against the boss, his movements were calculated and precise. They were as refined as those of a knight. It was as if he had become a different person. While the Wild Hunter's style was impressive in its own way, the knight's style was astonishing. If the hunter's approach involved rushing at the enemy with reckless abandon, the knight's style left no openings for the opponent, delivering precise and relentless attacks. As the battle reached Phase 2, Jaewon could feel a sinister atmosphere emanating from the scene. "Can't it move?" he muttered to himself. Then, Hyunsung used Reaper's chains. "This is madness," Jaewon thought, awestruck. After watching the video, Jaewon immediately contacted Hyunsung. He couldn't believe what he had seen. It wasn't something a normal person could do. He asked Hyunsung what skill he had used to defeat the boss. When Hyunsung woke up, he promptly returned Jaewon's call. Jaewon had been awake all night watching the video. Hyunsung assumed that Jaewon had stayed up because the video wasn't good. However, Jaewon assured him that it was the best. "This is the most impressive video I've ever seen," Jaewon said, adding that not even the #1 ranked player could create something like this. Hyunsung, relieved, suggested that if the video was that good, Jaewon should upload it as soon as possible. Jaewon replied that he and his team would pull all-nighters for an entire week just to finish editing these videos. Jaewon thought to himself that he might not need to work on anything else after this. He reassured Hyunsung not to worry about the video and promised to upload it to MeTube immediately. Jaewon then sent a message to his team, informing them about their first project. He told them that the man in the video was his friend and that they would now be working closely with him. Hyuna asked Hyunsung if, since he didn't want to reveal his class, he could at least tell her his rank. Hyunsung replied that a person's rank is determined by their class, so if he revealed his class, she would automatically know his rank. "Why would I do that?" he added. Hyuna then asked if Hyunsung was at least a unique rank. Hyunsung answered confidently, "Of course." He explained that if he were any lower than that, he wouldn't have considered leaving his previous job. Hyuna guessed that Hyunsung was at least a heroic rank. She felt happy because that meant Hyunsung met the requirements to join a guild. Of course, if Hyunsung didn't want to join, there was nothing she could do about it. Meanwhile, Rin's sister leveled up from 52 to 60 in just one day. Even with Rin's help, it was an incredibly fast progression for someone of unique rank. Hyuna asked Hyunsung what level he was currently at. Hyunsung replied that he wasn't sure but estimated it to be around level 30. Hyuna was shocked. Starting from level 1 and reaching level 30 in just one day seemed impossible. She wondered if Hyunsung was joking with her. To confirm, she asked if Hyunsung had really started just yesterday. Hyunsung immediately confirmed it. Hyuna then asked if Hyunsung had mentioned switching his class at level 1. Hyunsung nodded and said that was exactly what had happened. Hyuna was stunned and speechless by what she had heard. Seeing her reaction, Hyunsung asked if there was something on his face. Hyuna explained that she was simply amazed at how quickly Hyunsung had leveled up. When Hyunsung logged in, he was flooded with an overwhelming number of messages. Curious, he immediately checked the items he had obtained from defeating the boss. He was excited to see what valuable loot he had earned. However, he wondered if the items from the hidden dungeon were still secured in his inventory. To his surprise, there was absolutely nothing. Hyunsung had slept for 40 hours due to his narcolepsy skill, which also granted him stat bonuses. His strength increased by 10, reaction speed by 3, stamina by 5, magic power by 15, and intelligence by 7. A system notification appeared, stating, "Because you cleared the hidden dungeon, it has now been converted into a regular dungeon. It is recommended to retrieve the items as soon as possible. You have defeated the boss. Thanos' somnambulism has been deactivated. Due to the dungeon's reset, you have been transported to the nearest town." Now piecing everything together, Hyunsung realized that he was already in the village when he logged in. Hyunsung opened his status window. He realized that if he allocated more points into his strength, magic power, and stamina, he could make use of Iris's failed product 1. He also discovered that he had gained a new skill, Thanos' Nocturne. The skill's effect was as follows. For every successful attack by the user, the opponent would accumulate nightmare stacks. If the stacks were activated, all enemies with stacks, up to a maximum of 10, would receive 300% damage per stack. The cooldown for the skill was 1 hour. Since it didn't require mana or DP, Hyunsung could use it as long as the cooldown had passed. It was classified as a god-grade skill. Of course, such powerful items were only obtainable by clearing a hidden dungeon. Hyunsung thought that there might have been a skill book in the hidden dungeon, which prompted him to immediately rush back to the area. The guards, seeing his sudden sprint, assumed he was running to avoid paying the money they had given him. Hyunsung chased after a monster and demanded that it give him the map to the hidden dungeon. However, it was gone, the secret passage. Laughing to himself, Hyunsung remarked that he was fortunate to have such good luck. He didn't know what to do next, and he couldn't stop laughing. Two guards, witnessing his behavior, assumed they should just forget about the money they had given him. Hyunsung, now in a more positive mood, thought to himself that at least he hadn't died. If he had, his level would have dropped, and he wouldn't be able to log in for 24 hours. Instead of getting upset over the lost items, he decided to be grateful that he had survived the fight. Hyunsung checked his stats. Having already increased his points, he decided to try using Iris's failed product 1. It was one of the 7 failed products created by the famous blacksmith Iris, who traveled across the continent to study weapons. This item could be used as a weapon itself. It reacted when near other failed products, doubling the attack of the weapon it was attached to, as well as increasing the MP consumption of the associated weapons. Hyunsung equipped it on his sword. The only thing left to figure out was where he should go hunting next. Hyunsung searched for a hunting ground suitable for levels 70 to 80. He came across Rihai, which seemed like a more advanced version of Dha Town. He decided to head there. When he arrived, he found people buying items, begging for potions, asking for transportation scrolls, looking for party members to join their hunts, recruiting for parties, and so on. Hyunsung initially thought it was a desert area, but he was surprised to see so many people. Maybe the dungeons had fewer people. He thought that these people should have been hunting instead of wasting their time on trivial matters. Curious, Hyunsung wondered where the level 80 dungeon was. He made his way to Lycan's cave, but he couldn't enter. He needed to form a party with at least 3 members. Determined, he returned to find others who would be willing to join him in the dungeon. He shouted and begged as he looked for companions. This was the alt account of the hero guildmaster, Rina. She had helped her younger sister level up but didn't expect her to get so greedy, increasing by 8 levels in a single day. In any case, the dungeons around Rihai beyond level 80 required 3 people to enter, which was causing her trouble since no one seemed willing to go to Lycan's cave. She thought of recruiting a beginner and carrying them through. Moments later, she heard someone shouting, looking for people to join him in Lycan's cave. Rina wondered if she had misheard. High-level alts typically stick with their guild members, so it was unlikely that anyone would be looking for party members. Rina saw Hyunsung, who was shouting and pleading. She noticed that the clothes he was wearing were for beginners. Rina thought that he must be a high-level player using an alt account. There was only one reason why most high-level players raise alt accounts for hunting, to improve their control. Rina approached him to ask if he was still looking for party members to go to Lycan's cave. Hyunsung immediately replied yes. Rina said that she had 1 companion, so they would be 3 if he joined, and then asked him if he had anyone with him. Hyunsung answered that he was alone. They introduced themselves to each other, and Rina invited Hyunsung to meet her other companion. Rina also asked Hyunsung how long he planned to hunt in Lycan's cave. She wondered if he wanted to hunt with them if he planned to hunt for a long time. Rina thought about this because the level 100 dungeons in Rihai City required 3 people. She estimated that Hyunsung was probably around level 70 to 80, meaning he wasn't a high-level player's alt. Rina invited Hyunsung to hunt with them temporarily because all the dungeons here above level 80 required 3 people. However, their levels were a bit low, and she asked if that was okay with him. Hyunsung said it was fine because he was a low level too, and he should actually apologize. But Rina wondered if Hyunsung could keep up with their hunting speed. Yoon's class was a speed-based dual blade, so if they were too fast, they would have to slow down. Rushing too much wasn't ideal after all. It was a good opportunity for Rina to use this moment to control Yoon's impatience. Rina received a message from her sister. She asked her if she had found anyone yet, as she couldn't see anyone useful. But before they went to Rina's sister, Hyunsung excused himself to buy a sword. Rina pointed him in the direction where he could get a good one. She noticed that Hyunsung's speed seemed too fast for someone at level 80. She thought that Hyunsung was probably a speed-based swordsman. Their hunting speed wouldn't be too slow. Hyunsung returned, But Rina noticed that there was no change in his gear. Maybe he hadn't found anything he liked. Hyunsung had bought a decent sword, although its appearance was still the same due to Iris's failed product one. Special Steel Sword. It provided a 10% increase in attack speed, a 5-point boost in strength, and a 10-point increase in reaction speed. The damage was doubled when using Iris's failed product 1. With this, it could even be used against level 120 monsters. They then went to a coffee shop to meet Rina's sister. She looked young, just like Hyuna, or maybe even younger. Hyunsung had no issue with her age since they were trying to head to Lycan's cave, and surely they were both strong enough. Rina knew a lot about this area, so Hyunsung thought that she might be using an alt account. Hyunsung and Yoon introduced themselves to each other. Rina told Yoon that since Hyunsung planned to stay here for a long time, they would be able to keep up with him in hunting some dungeons. Yoon said they were low level, so he might understand, but they wouldn't be a hindrance when it came to skill, so Hyunsung didn't need to worry. Hyunsung also told Rina that he was a low-level player too, so it wasn't a problem. Hyunsung noticed that Yoon spoke confidently, but he didn't sense any arrogance from her. Instead, he felt a desire for progress from Yoon. He remembered that Rin had mentioned they were siblings. They looked alike, but their personalities were completely different. Hyuna and he were also different. He thought that the day would come when he would hunt with Hyuna like this as well. They invited Hyunsung to the party. After Hyunsung pressed the accept button, the siblings saw his level 35. Hyunsung laughed and reminded them that he had mentioned his level was low. The siblings were disappointed with his level 35 and thought that they would really have to carry him. However, Rina remembered that Hyunsung's speed was not something that would come from the reaction speed of a level 35. It was a speed that could be compared to a speed-based class at level 80. Such stats at his level meant that his class rank was probably quite high. His other stats didn't seem to fall far behind either. Because of this, Rina guessed that Hyunsung was a legendary class. She was now eager to try hunting with this person. Yoon asked her sister what they were going to do next. It seemed like Yoon wasn't too keen on partying with Hyunsung. Hyunsung thought the level difference was quite significant. However, Rina said it was fine. She believed that since Hyunsung wanted to try going there, he likely had the skills to prove himself. Rina thought that this would be the perfect opportunity to confirm Hyunsung's abilities. Yoon thought it was better than wasting time searching for someone else. Meanwhile, Hyunsung felt relieved because he no longer had to search for another party member. Hyunsung thanked them and asked the siblings if he could record a video while they were hunting. It was fine with them, and they asked if he was a MeTuber. Hyunsung said he was just starting out, so his videos were still being edited. Afterward, Hyunsung suggested they leave, but the two were surprised. Hyunsung asked if they weren't leaving right away. In response, Yoon asked Hyunsung if he hadn't been playing Idea for long, but it seemed like he had some skill. So, Yoon suggested to her sister that they leave with Hyunsung. They told Hyunsung that leaving right away wasn't a problem. However, Hyunsung asked if they weren't supposed to leave immediately. This was his first time hunting with a party. Rina explained that usually, they discuss the details about the monsters before entering the dungeon. This is like a briefing. They would have explained it first before starting, but it seemed like Hyunsung was already used to this, so they were surprised that he wanted to leave right away. Hyunsung thought to himself, why bother playing a game just to memorize a clear strategy? And so, they left to head toward the cave. They arrived at Lycan's cave. Rina asked if everyone was ready. Hyunsung replied with a yes. Yoon then asked Hyunsung if he could go first. She wanted to see what Hyunsung was capable of before they played as a party, and she reassured him that they would help if he got into danger, so he had nothing to worry about. Saying something like that to a party member you've just met could potentially upset them. In Idea, since you can't disband a party once you enter a dungeon, some users try to steal items and experience points for themselves by letting a party member die. Rina scolded Yoon for her words, but Hyunsung agreed to the suggestion. It would be problematic if they couldn't trust him while hunting as a party. It was true that his level was low, so it was only fair that he would have to prove his abilities. Refusing him would be disrespectful to his capabilities, and Rina realized this. With that, they proceeded into Lycan's cave. This was a dungeon that had not been visited by players for a long time. The monsters had awakened due to prolonged hunger. As a result, the monsters were now 20% stronger. However, Players would also receive a 50% increase in experience points for the next 5 days in the game, as part of an event buff. Hyunsung began recording and put on his mask. Yoon asked why he was wearing a mask. Hyunsung replied that it was just his persona. A monster approached, and Hyunsung said he will just do a quick warm-up. The opponent was a type of humanoid, which made it all the more exciting for Hyunsung. The monster began leaping toward him, and Hyunsung immediately matched its pace. The siblings were shocked to see Hyunsung rushing forward without dodging and without even drawing his sword. Yoon wondered if Hyunsung was going to die this time. However, Hyunsung suddenly drew his sword and swiftly struck the monster. The siblings were left speechless, their mouths agape at what they witnessed. They were astonished to see that such a clean and precise attack was possible. Hyunsung delivered a critical strike with a powerful attack. Through this, he discovered that he could land a critical strike even without hitting the enemy's vital points. He noticed the nightmare stack above the enemy's head and decided to use Thanos' Nocturne. The siblings saw this and wondered what it was. Suddenly, a black lightning bolt struck the monster's head, enveloping its entire body in electricity. As a result, the monster's body began to smoke, and it dropped to its knees before completely vanishing. Hyunsung had defeated the human-turned-wolf and gained 1 DP due to the effects of Thanos' dream. The siblings were in disbelief at how such a feat was even possible. Rina recalled Hyunsung's initial move. Even after witnessing it herself, it was too precise and clean to believe. Even if it's a skill, the success of an attack still depended on the user's control. Yoon asked her sister who this person was and whether such a feat was even possible. However, Rina could only reply that she wasn't sure. She wondered if she could achieve such flawless control using her main account, but she realized that it would be nearly impossible. She was in awe of Hyunsung's control, which seemed like a work of art. This made her think that she absolutely had to recruit Hyunsung into the Hero Guild. With this, Hyunsung confirmed the power of Thanos' Nocturne and how to finish off enemies after leaving them with just a sliver of health. It also seemed he had demonstrated his abilities to the siblings. Now, Hyunsung asked them if it was time to start hunting. As they continued deeper into the cave, they encountered 3 lichens ahead. Yoon couldn't believe that Hyunsung was faster than her, despite being a speed-based class. Since there were no visible effects, it was likely not a skill. It seemed his stats were simply that high. Yoon pushed herself to move even faster, but Hyunsung was so quick that he had already finished off all the enemies before Yoon could even reach them. Yoon was overwhelmed, not because the situation was dire, but because they weren't even far apart when Hyunsung killed 3 monsters before she could reach him. Moments later, Rina arrived, asking Yoon what had happened while looking around for the monsters. Noticing both Yoon and Rina were already there, Hyunsung asked if they should head to the next location. His question left the 2 girls confused, prompting them to ask him to repeat himself. Without waiting for their response, Hyunsung started moving again, leaving the 2 with no choice but to follow. Ahead, Hyunsung encountered another group of monsters. He estimated there were about 4 minutes left on Thanos' Nocturne's cooldown, so he decided to test the performance of his new gear without using any skills. As he attacked, he discovered he could deal more damage by rotating his hips in a specific way. Even the smallest details of his movements displayed an impressive level of precision. Hyunsung was enjoying the fight against the monsters. As he swung his sword at another one, the monster managed to block the attack, catching him by surprise and even launching an immediate counterattack. However, Hyunsung swiftly eliminated it. After dispatching the second monster, he noticed Yoon arriving and was impressed by her dual blades. Suddenly, Hyunsung sensed another monster behind him and remembered there were 4 in total. A system notification popped up, stating, "The human corrupted into a wolf feels fear." Hyunsung smiled, amused at the idea of a monster fearing the user's strength. With a single swing, he eliminated the creature and spotted a drop on the ground. Although it was a spear, which he didn't need, Hyunsung decided to take it to sell later. Hyunsung observed Yoon as she fought and thought she was doing well enough that he didn't need to step in. He noticed how she used her dual blades not only for offense but also as a makeshift shield, delivering twice the number of attacks when swinging quickly. Hyunsung was impressed, both by her practicality and the visual appeal of her technique. Inspired by her skill, he briefly wondered if he should try wielding 2 swords as well. Considering that Thanos' nightmare accommodates all weapon styles, it seemed possible. However, he quickly dismissed the idea, deciding there was no need to change his current style, which suited him perfectly. Moments later, Rina arrived and asked if the fight was over. Yoon nodded and replied, "Yes, Hyunsung got 3, and I got 1. Hyunsung then told them they should move on. As he started running, he reflected that fighting in a party could actually be enjoyable. However, the two girls remained silent, misunderstanding his demeanor. They thought Hyunsung was upset. A little-known fact, known only to a few top guild masters, is that this guild is the only one to have earned a territory with just 7 members. Their base, the Hero Guild House, is located in Istine Castle. Sunny, a legendary rank player, sat idly, feeling bored because Rina wasn't around, and the other guild members were busy with their own affairs. Letting out a sigh, she wondered if she should start raising an alternate account to pass the time. Suddenly, a portal appeared, signaling that someone was arriving. Hyuna stepped through, waving cheerfully at Sunny, who immediately ran over and hugged her. Sunny knew Hyuna had just returned from the hospital. Hyuna confirmed this and explained that ever since her brother quit his job to dedicate himself to the game, she had been busy adjusting her schedule to match his. Sunny asked Hyuna why her brother quit his job. Hyuna explained that, from what she'd heard, he quit because he advanced to a powerful class right at level 1. Intrigued, she tried to get more details from him, as his rank must be incredibly high. Based on what she had observed, Hyuna guessed it was probably above heroic rank. Sunny agreed, which led Hyuna to suggest that her brother could potentially join their guild. However, Sunny wondered about his skills. While there weren't strict conditions to join, all their current members were exceptional. She also worried he might stand out negatively, especially since even Rina's younger sister was proving to be quite talented. Confidently, Hyuna assured her that her brother's class was at least heroic rank, and he had reached level 30 in just a single day. Sunny couldn't believe it and wondered if Hyuna was exaggerating. Hyuna quickly clarified that while her brother could be playful, he wasn't the type to lie about something like this. From his reaction, she was convinced he was telling the truth. Sunny was shocked. Hyuna's brother was really that fast. A high-ranking class from level 1 and reaching level 30 in a single day. Sunny thought it sounded impossible unless you had exceptional skills. Both of them found it hard to believe, but if it were true, Sunny admitted Hyuna's brother might even be more skilled than Rina. Hyuna laughed, dismissing the thought, and said, "It's probably nothing that special." Sunny replied, "Even Rina isn't that skilled." They decided to ask Rina about it since she was playing on her alt account. Sunny contacted Rina, but when she answered the call, they could hear her out of breath. "I'll call back later," Rina said hurriedly. In the background, they could hear her chasing someone, her voice strained as if trying to keep up with someone moving farther away. Before they could say anything else, she hung up. Realizing Rina was clearly busy, Sunny shrugged, and Hyuna laughed, saying, "We'll just ask her next time." Changing the topic, Hyuna asked if Sunny wanted to go hunting together, to which Sunny happily agreed.